watching closely.
What's the secret, Max?
You just gotta find something you love to do and then do it for the rest of your life.
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Establishing Shot, a podcast where we do deep dives into directors and their filmographies. We are here today for episode 11, where we are covering the 9th film, if I'm not mistaken, in Wes Anderson's filmography. I hope you enjoyed last week, our little break from the series to kind of look at some best movies of the year. If you missed that one, go back and check it out because hopefully there's some good recommendations that you haven't really heard of or gotten a whole lot of buzz to go check out. But yeah, I'm here with my brother-in-law, Chase.
Hello.
He's here with me. We're actually recording in his apartment. Yep. Usually I'm in my closet doing kind of a video chat with my guest, but it just kind of worked out for us to record in the same room. So, a good little change of pace for me anyway, but
a little less cramped.
Yeah, it's a little less cramped, a little more room to kick back. But yeah, so shouldn't really mean anything for people on the podcast audio form, but I'm sure the people that might tune in on YouTube might notice the difference.
Probably.
But yeah, so I'm excited to get into Isle of Dogs. But first, Chase, do you want to just kind of tell people a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then maybe how you got into movies? What kind of sparked your interest in film?
Sure. So I'm a house painter here in Lafayette, Louisiana, where we live. As far as movies goes, I don't know. I always kind of liked movies. My dad's kind of a movie buff, so he kind of raised me watching movies all the time. Mm-hmm. And then just as I got older, a lot of the friends that I surrounded myself with, were really into, I don't know, more indie kind of art, artisanal movies, I suppose.
Sure. Yeah.
So, kind of got more into, I don't know, film, if however you want to
cinema.
Say. Sure. I can remember with Wes Anderson in particular, the first movie that I saw was Fantastic Mr. Fox. Mm-hmm. I've actually got my friend Carrie Campbell to thank for that, probably. Okay. She recommended that movie to our family over and over again back when it came out, till we finally all watched it and loved it. And then years later, probably 2016 or so, the apartment I was living in, I had another friend who lived in the same complex, and we would go have movie nights at his time all the time, almost unannounced. We would just kind of show up and make ourselves at home and watch whatever he was watching. And so that's when I really got into Wes Anderson. He showed me Life Aquatic, Grand Budapest, just a bunch of his films, and really started to love his work then.
Yeah. It's always fun to hear people's introduction. I feel like a lot of my guests have watched Grand Budapest as their first Wes Anderson movie.
It's a good place to start. I don't blame you.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of coming. I kind of shared on that episode that I'm kind of coming around on the idea of that being a good starting off point, diving off point into Wes Anderson. I guess just when I was first thinking about it, it was kind of there's so much going on in Grand Budapest. You've got the different aspect ratios, you've got the different timelines, you've got
the stop motion animation.
Yeah, then you got narration. You're cutting back and forth between different characters and different time periods, and so I was just like, I don't know if that's a good starting off point, but having rewatched it again and talked about it recently, especially the big chunk of the movie that's in like the 30s, it's like just so like fast paced and exciting. Then I can kind of see like, oh yeah, this is a good spot for people to jump in. But I have always thought that Fantastic Mr. Fox is like the perfect medium for Wes's style, and so it comes across to me more palatable.
It's so charming.
Yeah.
It really just grabs you and makes you want to watch,
Right.
every frame.
Yeah. So I want to say that I saw Fantastic Mr. Fox for the first time. I had seen a few of his films by then, and I saw it with Robin, my wife, your sister.
Yeah.
I think I watched it with her the first time I watched it, and yeah, we've kind of made it our Thanksgiving tradition. But yeah, so yeah, I love Fantastic Mr. Fox. But yeah, and so today we're getting into his second animated film, stop motion animation with Isle of Dogs. And I'm pretty sure this is the first Wes Anderson film I went and saw in theaters when it was released.
I don't think I actually caught it in it barely showed, like it was maybe out for a week or two here.
Yeah.
I don't think I actually caught it in theaters when it came out, but I caught it as soon as it came out on Blu-ray.
Right. Yeah, and so, and yeah, I've talked before on the podcast about the problem of like good movies only being out in theaters for just like a week or two.
It's true.
But yeah, that's unfortunate. But yeah, when this came, so Grand Budapest came out in 2014. And that was like really a time where I was really, really digging more into movies. And I remember seeing Grand Budapest. I didn't see it in theaters, but I saw it, either like end of 2014, maybe beginning of 2015 when it was, getting Oscar buzz and stuff. But I didn't see it in theaters. And yeah, so it was 4 years because this came out in 2018, Isle of Dogs. And it was like 4 years. And when it came out at that point, I loved Wes Anderson. So I was like, oh, I have a chance to go see one of his films in theaters. Yeah, I didn't catch French Dispatch in theaters.
I didn't either.
Yeah,
I still need to see French Dispatch. I'll catch up with French Dispatch.
Yeah.
I guess as this is coming out, probably right. That week I'll probably catch up with it for the podcast the following week.
Yeah. And I'm sure people know by now. We usually record well ahead of time, but so yeah,
that's the way to do it.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so Isle of Dogs is the only one I've seen in theaters, which is odd because of how much I love this director, but it's just a lot of his movies weren't on my radar when they were coming out, just because I wasn't into that sort of cinema film, I guess, at that point. But it is what it is. Hopefully I'll get to catch Asteroid City coming out. At this point it's not out yet. It's coming out next weekend, I believe.
I think you're right.
At the time of this recording, so I'm hoping to sneak out and watch that. Try to scribble some notes in the dark for the podcast. I've never really done that before, so that'll be interesting to see my bad handwriting is already pretty illegible, so I don't know.
So in the dark, surrounded by people just trying to scratch it out. Yeah. See how well you can read it afterwards.
We'll see. Maybe it'll make it better. Who knows? But yeah, I really enjoyed digging into a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff with this one. So this is the first Wes Anderson movie that doesn't have a Criterion edition. So from Bottle Rocket all the way through Grand Budapest, they all are in Criterion Collection, and I have all of those discs. And so like I just had this like plethora of extra features to dig into.
Yeah.
So this was the first one where I really had to like seek stuff out on my own, because it wasn't just like given to me, you know, with a fork and spoon on the Criterion disc. But yeah, I enjoyed kind of scrounging YouTube and Google for some good stuff for this one. So
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
yeah, there are some like little featurettes on the you know, the Blu-ray.
They're only a few minutes long, though. It doesn't give you the depth that I'm sure the Criterion ones do.
Yeah. Usually in Criterion, you have some of those that are like little featurettes, like promotional featurettes is basically what they are. But yeah, you usually have like one or two longer form, you know, kind of like short film documentaries, basically like 20-30 minutes worth of stuff. Yeah, I didn't get that with this, but that's okay. The other thing that I didn't have for this one, there is actually a Wes Anderson collection book for Isle of Dogs that's out, but I don't have it. I have the one that covers, you know, Bottle Rocket through Moonrise Kingdom, and then I have Grand Budapest has its own book, and I have that one, which I didn't even scratch the surface of everything in that.
I've seen that book on your bookshelf. Yeah. It's a lot for one movie.
Yeah.
You know, it's looking at it next to the one for all the movies leading up to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a lot in there. And I assume Isle of Dogs is similar. It's not by Matt Zoller Seitz, who did the other ones. I think he did like the foreword for it, and maybe helped edit it. But I guess he let some other people take on that one. And so, but I didn't have that. I don't have it. I just wasn't able to get it in time for recording the podcast. So yeah, this will be my first one with my research all just being like, well, what can I find? Let's see what's out there on the old intrawebs.
Your journalism is being put to the test.
Yeah.
Like who's the student journalist character?
Oh yeah, Tracy.
Tracy, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I'm missing is I do have some freckles. I'm missing like the blonde fro though. It's the only thing I'm kind of missing.
If you grow your hair out,
Yeah.
we could probably make something work.
Well, you know, maybe get a little perm.
Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe one day. That character actually, I read somewhere that have you ever seen An Angel at My Table? It's directed by Jane Campion. She
I don't guess I have.
Yeah, she directed Power of the Dog, which was really popular with Benedict Cumberbatch, kind of Western.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, it came out a couple of years ago. That was one that got a lot of buzz. And she's had some other really the piano is probably her biggest one. But yeah, An Angel at My Table is about I'm trying to think of the author. She's a like New Zealand author, I think. I just can't think of what her name is. But in the movie, Carrie Fox plays that character, and it's she's basically Tracy is based off of her. Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. Janet Frame. She's a Kiwi author.
Fair enough.
And it's kind of like a biopic about her life. It's a really good movie. But yeah, apparently Tracy's character, the way she looks is kind of based off of like that younger version of Janet Frame in that movie. Which is, it's just like a random like little tidbit.
Yeah, that's fun trivia.
Yeah. But yeah, so when I was looking into this, I was like, man, I wonder how this movie got started in Wes's mind, because usually like in an interview he'll kind of talk about just how the idea came about, and really like it's kind of like almost a same old story, but with a more like funny way that the premise came about. So they did this movie at Three Mills Studios in East London, which is where they did Fantastic Mr. Fox. Well, when they were doing, the animation for Fantastic Mr. Fox, they were driving to the studio every day, and there's this sign that he kept seeing that said Isle of Dogs. And apparently, I didn't look into this, so I don't know if it's true, but apparently, like, there's a place called Isle of Dogs that the king used to keep, like, his hunting dogs on.
Yeah, I heard that same anecdote in one of his interviews.
Yeah, and so I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, it sounds plausible.
It does.
But yeah, so he just kept seeing that sign, and he was like, I need to make a movie about dogs on an island. And so, like, he even early on just had names picked out, like the 5 names of the dogs in the film, King, Duke, Chief. Like, he was like already had all those names in his mind for this movie about dogs on an island. And he had this idea. He kind of like talked about it with Jason Schwartzman and Roman Coppola, who he wrote Darjeeling Limited with. And I think Roman Coppola has helped with writing on something else too that I can't remember off the top of my head.
It might have been Grand Budapest.
Maybe. I think Grand Budapest was a guy named Hugo Guinness that co-wrote with him. But yeah. Anyways, yeah, he kind of was talking about this idea with them, and they did, obviously, Darjeeling Limited is set in India,
right?
This one set in Japan. They obviously like have a thing about like making movies set in other places, and so they had, I guess, talked before about making a movie in Japan, and they're like, oh, we want to make a movie about dogs on an island. Oh, we want to make a movie set in Japan. And it's just kind of like this melding of ideas together, which is kind of like how a lot of his movies come about. Like, I remember when I was looking at Moonrise Kingdom, it was like one of the biggest just random ideas that kind of melded together for that one. And I guess this is a similar thing with just less ideas.
Sure. Yeah. Just kind of two simple, desires.
Right.
Make this, dog movie and make a movie of Japan and just put them together.
Just put them together. And yeah, I think we got a good one. Yeah, he kind of talks about Wes, talks about 4 major Japanese artist influences. So film-wise, he talks about Akira Kurosawa as a big influence, and then Hayao Miyazaki. So 2 very different Japanese filmmakers, I think.
For sure.
Kurosawa was like kind of a master of epics, in a way. Like I've seen a handful of Kurosawa films, and they're all very like big, epic, not really like fast paced. They kind of like take their time. But yeah, and then Miyazaki obviously is making like very charming animated, hand-drawn animated movies. And so
I would qualify a few of his as kind of epics too, though.
Yeah, adventure epics for sure. Like you think of,
especially like Princess Mononoke.
That's what I was trying to think of. Princess Mononoke.
Nausicaa would, they're just kind of these larger than life, grand scale movies.
Right, right. Yeah, they definitely are. They definitely have more epic proportions for sure.
Yeah.
I guess I can see that relation between the two. But there's still like a lot of. I wouldn't say that Kurosawa is charming in the way that Miyazaki is, even in Mononoke is the one that's like, I guess, the least charming, just because like it gets pretty. There's some pretty savage
Oh, definitely.
parts of that, which like I guess you can see come out in Isle of Dogs. There's some pretty savage
There are, yeah.
parts in it. Yeah,
There's ears being torn off and
Yeah.
spit on the ground.
yeah. There's pieces of an airplane going into a little kid's head.
Yeah.
There's surgery.
Yeah. There's all the component animals of the sushi meal, kind of coming onto the butcher block,
Yes.
still alive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it is like he kind of brings together, like, I guess that maybe that is where Miyazaki really has some influences, like that meld of charming and savage. So yeah, it's interesting. Kurosawa, I think, what I see. Have you seen much Kurosawa?
I haven't. It's a real area that I need to fill in.
Yeah, so obviously Seven Samurai is like one of his big masterpieces.
Right.
And then I've seen Ran, which is his version of Shakespeare. I want to say it's his like Japanese adaptation of. Man, I just can't even think of what it is off the top of my head. I think I want to say Hamlet, but
I think you're right. Yeah.
yeah. It's epic. I'm trying to think of what else I've seen by him. I've only really seen a handful, but what I have seen is the influence I see here for this film is obviously you have like nods all throughout the movie. Probably like way more than I noticed, with just like, little like Easter eggs and stuff like that. But as far as like actual filmmaking, I think, something that he pulls from Kurosawa is the stillness, before like action. So I think that's something that Kurosawa really takes his time, like with settling in on like a character and some dialogue and like slowing things down, and then like there will be some like big action where something's like more fast paced, and then it like slows down again and like builds character again, and I kind of see that in Isle of Dogs.
I do too, now that you're saying that.
Yeah. You'll get these like really like slow moments where you're just kind of like building the characters, and then there'll be like a cloud of cotton dust in a fight with the dogs.
Right.
And then more like still slow moments. It's a little bit more fast paced than a Kurosawa film. I guess probably just the nature of the sort of movie it is. But I do see the influence for sure.
There's a certain pace that Wes tends to use. Nothing really, he'll let things have their moment, but he won't let them drag. He keeps like
Yes.
I don't know. There's kind of a wittiness to the pacing of his films.
Yeah, I would say he's efficient is the way that I think is maybe the best way to say it. He gives you what you need, but he doesn't just like drag you along.
Right.
He doesn't tell you what you need to know about a character and then keep telling you. I guess he's like, I've told you what you need to know about this character. It's time to like move on to the next thing now.
Right.
And you should know by now what's going on with this character, which I appreciate. But yeah, the other two, like artistic influences were, they're two, like wood block that, Japan is, a very like, unique to Japan type of art is like the wood block paintings.
Mm-hmm.
And so probably two of the most well known are Hokusai and Hirishige. I'm probably butchering the Japanese.
I would be too. I'll let you handle the Japanese pronunciations.
Hokusai, I heard Wes say, so I'm saying it like he says. Because if I were to pronounce it, it would not be that. I would not pronounce it that way, based on what it looks like. Hiroshige sounds right to me, but it's probably not. Please forgive if there just happens to be any Japanese speaking listeners. Please forgive my terrible pronunciations. But yeah, I didn't really recognize anything from Hiroshige when I kind of looked him up on Google. But Hokusai has the very, very famous painting of the wave.
Oh yeah.
That's his. And so hopefully when I say Japan, the painting of the wave, most people can like think in their mind of what that looks like. And if not, you can look them up, and just Google it. But yeah, go look at these artist paintings, and you can really see like the influence on sort of the backdrops and the art style of the film.
And definitely with all the shots of like televisions, where they have more like traditional 2D animation, it's kind of really got that woodblock feel to it as well. In that.
Yeah, I could see that. I didn't think about that, but yeah, that's a good point. That was really interesting. One of the things that Wes said when he was talking about that was that, if you were to ask him what exactly he's pulling from these 4 Japanese artists, he kind of said, I couldn't really put my finger on it. It's just, he kind of said he just kind of like soaked in their work and just went from there. Which makes sense to me. I'm sure like, and he kind of admitted there's probably people that will notice things that, I took from this artist or this filmmaker or whatever. He said, but it's less like I'm looking for things that I can use and more just like taking in a lot of their work and then using what I've just as kind of like in me, I guess, when I'm making it. So I thought that was pretty cool to kind of hear about how he, I guess you kind of see that in a lot of his work. I would say Rushmore and some of his other work has that kind of French New Wave kind of influence, but it's not necessarily like he's directly like copying or taking from them. Right. It's just kind of like he's just seen a lot of that work, and so he wants to make that style of movie, and the influence is there, sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, the another thing that I thought was kind of like important for this film in particular was that he brought on a Japanese, I guess, well, he's not exactly like a filmmaker or anything, but he's a writer and editor and designer to kind of help him with this movie. His name is Kunichi Nomura. So like if you were to go into the credits on IMDb or Letterboxd or whatever, he's listed as one of the writers. Gotcha. And so really like he came in and helped so much that it earned him a co-writing credit is basically what happened. But yeah, he does I think some of the main things he does, just apart from doing this, which this is kind of like more of a blip in this guy's career than anything else, is writing and editing. So he does, I think he has some like publications that he edits for and writes for. And then apparently he does like a lot of like interior design and even like architectural design. So like a really kind of like, wide ranging, I guess he's kind of wide ranging in the fields that he is creative in, I would say, I guess.
Now, is he the fellow that when I was listening to the interviews, Wes had mentioned meeting one of the Japanese guys that was helping them through Sofia Coppola and Bill Murray whenever they were working on
Lost in Translation.
Yes, Lost in Translation.
Yeah. So this guy, because he does so much like interior design and architectural work, he helped Sofia Coppola with Lost in Translation, which is set in Japan.
Right.
He helped them with locations. So when they would kind of describe to him what they were wanting out of a scene, and he would help find a good location to shoot for them. And so Wes is friends with Sofia Coppola and obviously Bill Murray.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure Roman Coppola.
That's
too.
Sophia's brother.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's that kind of circle of friends there. But yeah, Wes apparently was visiting Japan, and when they were shooting it, he probably went to like or I don't know if it was when they were shooting Lost in Translation. I'm kind of like assuming that because Sofia Coppola basically like asked Nomura to kind of show Wes around Japan. And it's funny, like I read, it was actually like a Japanese website and article that Google translated for me. So I was like having to decipher the translation, but it seems like Nomura was kind of saying that he didn't realize that it was Wes Anderson at first until they like Wes started talking about like film with him, and you realize like, oh, I know who this guy is. I like his movies.
That's cool.
Yeah. And he was just like doing Sofia Coppola a favor, I guess. Like, oh, this is her friend. Yeah, sure, I'll show him around.
Yeah. A little did he know that he's helping a director find his eye for a movie.
Yeah. And so, it wasn't apparent to me if like Wes was necessarily like trying to get ideas for a movie at that point. I got the feeling that he was just like visiting.
Oh, okay.
And so, because I think it was like years later when they started working on Isle of Dogs that he called Nomura and asked him to come on to help. I guess they kind of had built a friendship just from him showing them around Japan. And that was the Japanese connection that he had to reach out to. But yeah, so he brought him on to help with this movie. Nomura kind of talks about like basically like they would be working on something and Wes would say like, here's what I want to do here. Is this like accurate to Japan? Like, does this make sense like for, I guess, this setting, or is this what a Japanese person would do? Is this the sort of thing you would see? All those sorts of questions that obviously are going to come up if you're trying to like make a movie set in Japan.
Make sure it feels authentic. Yeah.
Right. And so he would run all of that stuff by Nomura, and he would say yes. He kind of talks about like I would tell him yes or no, but also like he would kind of like, I guess, give input of like yes, or it seemed like maybe sometimes it would be no, but also like this is also an imaginative world, so he tried to like not like stamp out all the imagination. That was something that he kind of said, that I saw that he had said in a couple different interviews, was he wanted to make sure he wasn't like getting rid of the imagination just to make everything like completely 100% authentic, I guess.
Sure.
Which there's no way it could be.
Oh no. Yeah.
But yeah, he kind of talks about too, which makes sense. He talks about how he felt like his, I guess like intuition and the way he works and his attention to detail, like really meshed well with Wes when they were working together, because Wes obviously has a lot of attention to detail, and because of his work, both like writing and editing, but also with like interior design and architecture, like he has like a really keen eye for detail. And so like when they were working on things together, Nomura just talked about how like well they worked together just because of that, I guess like common sensibility. So that was kind of cool to hear. Yeah, Nomura even like reworked the Japanese portion of the script. So like,
Gotcha.
yeah, they would write it out and I guess like get it translated to Japanese, but then he would send it to Nomura, and Nomura would read through the Japanese translation, and he didn't just like make it more accurate. He talks about he tried to like make it have a Wes Anderson feel in Japanese, which is really cool. Like
That is cool.
That's something that like I don't plan on learning Japanese in my life, but who knows? Maybe one day I will.
Yeah, and if you did, going back and like
Yeah.
watching the movie and listening to that Japanese dialogue would be really cool.
Yeah. So yeah, it makes me, you know, I'd be curious to hear from, you know, a Japanese viewer, like, oh, does the like the dialogue in Japanese, does it have that Wes Anderson sort of like wit and style to it? Which, you know, that's what Nomura said he tried to do with it. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That is
and like thoughtful too. To think like, I don't want to just make this accurate translation. I want to actually give it my best to give it Wes's style.
Really letting like the fan and like the love of Wes's movies come out through his like work on the project.
Yeah, and even like in not just in the English but in the Japanese. But yeah, who knows if he did it well or not? I don't know because I don't speak in Japanese. But yeah, and so like because he was doing that, because he was reworking the script for the Japanese portion, he would record him like I guess like reading out the dialogue for the Japanese portion, just so like the I guess the people working on I guess editing and I don't know, the animators and all that would have a good feel of what it was supposed to sound like and the kind of cadence and all that sort of stuff. And then they liked his mayor, the way he read for the mayor so much, so they just kept it. So he's actually credited. He's a co-writer, but he also like is the voice of the mayor in the
That's
movie.
cool.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder, like, did they make him re-record the mayor, or did they just use the recording he sent them?
I kind of hope they just used the
That's kind of the sense I got. Yeah. Which is really funny, but also like cool.
Yeah.
But he did help with Japanese casting too. That's something that I appreciated, was that if you go through the cast list, like obviously you have, you know, like Bill Murray's and Jeff Goldblum's as like the dogs, Greta Gerwig as the American foreign exchange student.
Right.
But all the Japanese character are Japanese people.
Yeah, I really appreciate that too.
Yeah, and so even if they're Japanese American, they're still you know, Japanese. Like I think Kim Watanabe is in there. I'm not sure if he's from Japan or from America, but I know he is in a lot of like American and British movies.
He is, yeah.
So I don't know where he actually like is from and resides, but he is he is Japanese heritage. So
right.
But yeah, I kind of wrote down a lot of the like Japanese culture details that I thought were cool. Was there any that stood out to you just from like watching this film and seeing things that, like, I don't know how familiar you are exactly with Japan. I know you like are a big fan of like Miyazaki and stuff like that. Yeah, was there anything that like you were watching it and it was like, oh, that's a cool like way to incorporate Japan in that?
I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. One thing that really, like, I don't know, just kind of I noticed that I don't think I had noticed before. So I watched the movie twice in the last couple days just to kind of and on my second watch through, I noticed that Atari's shoes, his sandals, are like the old Japanese like wooden sandals with like
Yeah.
the two blocks on the bottom that, you know, I'm sure hardly anyone actually wears anymore.
Right.
But at the same time, I was like, oh, hey, that's I hadn't even noticed that, but that's cool that
Yeah.
through this whole movie, you know, the main character's, you know, just wearing these old fashioned, you know, wooden sandals.
Yeah, I think they were made of. It seemed like they were made of metal.
Mm.
And I almost wonder. I was actually wondering this when I was watching it. Did he like lose his shoes when he crashed the plane? And did he just kind of like make these from some of the scraps?
Huh, I wonder.
Because he didn't have any shoes.
It did look like it kind of matched the rest of the jumpsuit,
Okay.
but maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That was just something that I was like popped in my head as I was watching because they didn't look like they were made of wood to me. They looked like they were made of metal, and they even like sort of had like when he would be walking on metal, it kind of had a metal on metal kind of sound when he was walking. But that could just be, I could just be like totally theorizing on that.
Sure.
Who knows what Wes had in mind as far as that goes. But yeah, that is like, and that is one of the like smaller details probably. Like, you know, you have a lot of like big details. Like obviously the art in general is just is the main one you see.
The drum number at the very beginning.
Yes, those are called taiko drums. And they actually had a Japanese musician record that, and then they liked it so much that when him and Desplat were working on the score, they incorporated that like all throughout the score too, which I really like. I love that. I love like the sound those drums have.
I do too.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought was kind of like just like an interesting like sort of trivia thing. So you have the sumo little sequence that's just kind of like a setup for something happening with the mayor.
Right.
But he's watching a sumo match, and they throw like, you know, the one sumo wrestler like, you know, tosses the other guy out, and all of a sudden all these things start like from the audience are like throwing these things up. They're actually like small seat cushions apparently. They're called zabuton. Again, I don't know how to pronounce it, but that happens when I'm saying this terribly. Yokozuna, which is like it's basically like, think of like a world champion boxer. That's what the Yokozuna is.
Okay.
In sumo wrestling, they're like the
best of the best.
The best of the best at that time. So those like seat cushion things get thrown up when the Yokozuna is beat.
Oh, okay.
And then, you know, you have the corrupt mayor sitting there, and like there's like, I guess like maybe a fan theory that it's some reference to this. Apparently in 2011 there was like a match fixing scandal in Japan for sumo. And so there's like a fan theory that was a reference to that 2011 sumo match fixing scandal. Which like would make sense in the context of the corrupt mayor who is like using everything he can to like make money and build his own industry.
Right. Another like little like cultural detail since you're talking about like the mayor and corruption.
Yeah.
His like big back piece tattoo whenever he like comes out of the tub.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's I guess a little bit more of like a stereotype these days. Like it's like the culture around tattoos is starting to change in Japan, but for the longest time, especially like those big pieces like that were like associated with like the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia.
Right.
And so like him having that back piece is almost like an outward sign of like his like inward corruption.
Right.
Like I've got some friends that are like supposed to be like moving to Japan soon, and like they, you know, you still get told today, like as foreigners, like, yeah, you want to be careful, like when and how you show your tattoos, because a lot of like especially for like middle-aged and older like people, like it's still kind of associated with like that. It'll kind of give them a distaste towards you if they see that you have tattoos.
Yeah, and that's a detail that I didn't even notice. And that's the thing. There's so many in this that's like, man, it's hard to like keep. I mean, you're not going to be able to keep track of them all. It's one of those things, like if you really enjoy Japanese culture, I'm sure that you just see so much awesome stuff in this movie that like someone like me that I enjoy some Japanese filmmakers, but other than that, like I don't know a ton about Japanese culture. Like I'm just never going to catch all that stuff. So like, yeah, it kind of has, I feel like it brings that West like traveler sensibility to it, where like, I've listened to, or read interviews, just him talking about how when he travels, he actually like his first time going somewhere, like he obviously enjoys, but he actually enjoys more like returning to places after you've like built relationships somewhere, and like basically like kind of becoming more like accepted, not just like as a tourist, but like as someone that oh, they're coming back, that person. And so like it kind of brings that traveling, like I want to return here and see all these details again kind of sensibility to it. There's a lot of like obvious stuff like the sumo and the sushi, but then there's like a lot of other like smaller details that comes from, I guess, like that more frequent visiting that he talks about. But yeah, there's so much stuff. I mean, you have like the Kabuki theater reference that's going on at one point. There's the little stage plays, and then Atari has some haikus that he says that are great. So Tracy, her where she lives is called the Kikichio residence, and he is a major character in Seven Samurai.
Oh, okay.
And so that's one of those things that's kind of like an Easter egg.
Yeah, just something
Kurosawa. Yeah. And then the little sad song that plays. I think it plays more than once, but I think the scene I remember is like when they're burying the dog that he thought was Spots, but is actually Sport. There's this song that plays that's from Seven Samurai, the score of Seven Samurai.
Gotcha.
During that scene. And then the only other like big thing that I thought was interesting was there's a reference to Toho Mountain at some point. I think it's in one of the like little monologues where when either the narrator or like Jupiter or somebody is given like a monologue of a backstory on something. They reference Toho Mountain, and Toho is a film studio in Japan, and they're famous for doing a lot of like Kurosawa films, and also like the Godzilla franchise.
Gotcha.
So that's like a kind of like just a reference of like appreciation for that studio, that Japanese studio. So I thought that was cool too.
Especially with Godzilla's history with puppet animation.
Right. Yeah. And I was looking that up because I was like, was Godzilla stop motion? And they originally were going to do stop motion for Godzilla, but they ended up, I can't remember if it was like for budget reasons or there was some sort of like constraint where they couldn't exactly do stop motion. And so they did like, I think people call it like pseudomation or something, but there's like actually a guy in the
like a guy in the suit kind of like doing the kind of replacing that inner skeleton.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's fun. But yeah, there is definitely, you still have like the puppetry going on there.
Definitely.
And so that's fun to kind of think about. But yeah, there's just a ton of Japanese culture details. I mentioned the sushi sequence, which is just, it's fun, and it's also like, I feel like it really like captures what's like so unique and just like kind of, for a lack of a better word, just cool about about like Japanese cuisine. It's just so unique and interesting, and you can see, to me, I feel like that scene, that little short like sequence of making that that sushi box was just like showed like a great appreciation for like the art form of making sushi.
Definitely. Yeah.
I haven't seen the documentary Euro Dreams of Sushi. I've wanted to.
It's good. I recommend it.
Yeah. But it from what I understand, like the appreciation for like the art form that is making sushi is like it comes out to me in that little sequence.
Me too. Yeah. It makes you hungry for fish. Definitely.
Yes. But yeah. What did you think of like the voice casting? Did you notice like, were there any like characters that their voices, their vocal performance kind of stood out? Or I think just while you're thinking of that, the new addition that really like I felt was really well done was Bryan Cranston as Chief.
Yes, I agree. He really brought a gruffness to the character that was needed for it.
Yes. And he's done, I kind of looked up, he had done some other voice work before for some other animated stuff, and I think something, even maybe another stop motion, I can't remember. But yeah, I felt like he was a great addition to like Wes's, I guess, like rotating collaboration cast.
Yes.
But yeah, were there any others that kind of stood out?
Ed Norton's performance really stood, like, I thought the nervous energy that he brought of just like this dog slowly losing, its grip on,
Yes.
it, like he says at the beginning, like, I think I'm going to give up right now. Like him just like slowly losing his what's the word I'm looking for? I guess his domestication.
Yeah.
But just trying to cling to it.
His petness.
Yes.
Clinging on to his petness as much as he can. Yeah. I really liked, he was, Rex, I think was his character.
I think so.
Yeah. He kind of is the Chief. You kind of get the feeling is like, I don't know, you get the feeling that there's like a power dynamic going on there between Chief and Rex, which is a fun dynamic.
Really, it's with all of, and I mean, I guess it's kind of in the names, like they're all named like Chief, Duke, Rex, King, Boss, like, but they're all trying to co-alpha their little pack. It's I don't know. I kept trying to find more of a theme with the names, but I can never quite put my finger on it. But it was just fun to me that like they've all got like Bryan Cranston says, and like when he's introducing them in that first scene with them, like, we're all like alpha dogs, but like if you're in a pack, all being alpha dogs just doesn't work.
Right.
And every time they try to take a vote, like it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that I bet, like, if you ask Wes, like, why they were all named in, like, that kind of, like, alpha dog leader, different names of different sorts of leaders, he would probably just say, I just thought they were fun dog names. Because, out of, like, all the interviews I've, like, read and listened to, that, like, that just feels like an answer he would give. Like, Yeah, they were good dog names. I didn't really think about that beforehand. um, but yeah, one of the interesting things about just like the making of the film was that they all, so like for Fantastic Mr. Fox, he took, Clooney and some of the other actors, like they went and recorded like out like in a farm and got a lot of like extra sounds. Well, for this one, he didn't really do anything like that. It was all like studio work. But he didn't like necessarily bring people in. Like I know Jeff Goldblum talked about like he was in LA and Wes was in New York.
Right.
And he was in a studio in LA recording his, and even like they even got a lot of like, so whenever Wes would need something extra, he would just tell them to record it on their iPhone and send it to him.
Yeah.
And so like he even said like in one interview I was watching, like he would, I guess call or text him back and be like, I think there was a little bit of noise in the background. Could you do that one again?
Which even with that, there are a few places where you kind of feel like, okay, are they animating around like some noise that was in the recording?
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, I don't think this is really speculation. I think this is exactly what happened. But the little featurette of all the cast interviews where they like animated it with their characters afterwards, you can tell that like each of those settings, the reason they put them in that setting is because of the quality of the voice recording and like trying to match the tone of whatever they had on hand to record with.
Yeah. That's got to be what was going on there, which is a really fun, like if you... I wonder if you can find that on YouTube.
I think you can.
Yeah. So if you don't have the disc, the physical copy of Isle of Dogs, like see if you can find they did these, like there's a featurette of the cast interviews where they just animate them as their own dogs. So it's Bryan Cranston talking as Bryan Cranston, but they don't put him on the screen. They animate his dog speaking for him, and they are all in different settings. Probably. They probably did record those on their iPhones and just send it to Wes.
Like I know for Ed Norton's, like that, like it keeps being like scratchy and like you hear him like hitting the mic a few times, so they animate his dog like in this like warehouse with this boom mic coming down, and he keeps like running into it and stuff.
Like poking his nose on it.
Yeah.
I really loved that. That was fun. But yeah, I mean, they really like the voice recording is something that they do like really early on. Because what they'll do is they'll go ahead and record all like the vocal performances, and then obviously like I said, like Goldblum talked about, like, oh, Wes called me and said he needed another line here or there. So obviously, like if you're kind of making adjustments to the script, like you'll need something extra. But most of it was done like they would spend like a day or less in the studio, record, and they were done.
Yeah.
And then because what they do is when they start animating, they take the storyboard and they do the animatic of it, which is we talked about it on Fantastic Mr. Fox's the first time he did an animatic, but it's basically like taking these rough sketches and animating them,
right?
And then they put the voices over that, and it gives the animators like a really good look of, okay, where do I need to have the camera for this shot? Where do I like what scale of the puppet do I need to use? Like it really gives them a good feel of like the frame for that shot, which is really cool. And actually Wes, when he did that for Mr. Fox, it was so helpful that he actually started doing it for live action movies too.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so he did it for Moonrise, and he did it for Grand Budapest. They made animatics.
That comes through in Grand Budapest.
Oh yeah.
Like you can, now that I know that, like that makes sense that it's all kind of he already had it all kind of sketched out, and they were really able to build everything to his vision. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is really cool. It's funny, like a lot of like stuff that Wes like starts doing that you start like seeing results from is just like sort of like happy accident sort of things. So like, oh, like normally you do make an animatic for a stop motion film. So he that's what he did. And then he was like, oh, I like this. This is very helpful. I'm going to keep doing it. It's similar to like we talked on the Rushmore episode, I think, of how like he wasn't planning on doing like that dolly shot, like that kind of pans tracks like walking, but the field was muddy. It had rained. And so that was they had to like rework the whole like shot, and they did that, and he liked it so much that like that's become one of his like signature like things that is in all of his films,
right,
including stop motion ones. Like you have that a lot in this one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's cool watching him learn new tools and add them to the tool belt and keep them around.
Yeah, and it shows too that as a filmmaker, he's always like learning. He's always like willing to make adjustments and like kind of learn on the fly, like try new things to try to capture what he has in his mind. And then like if it works, like he's like, okay, yeah, like you said, add that to the tool belt. So I think that's pretty cool. Oh, one thing that I thought was cool too was they actually had a bunch of dogs like on set.
Oh yeah,
like, running around. Too. Yeah.
They would like strap the camera, and I mean, knowing that now, you can see it in like the animation. Whenever you see like the dogs running, like it's as though like you're a camera's perspective on the back of a dog, watching it move around and interact with other dogs and other people. Yeah.
So they did capture like a lot of dog movements. I think I wrote down. They had I don't have a number, but they did have like a database of dog movements that they worked from when they were animating, and then but yeah, they just had dogs running around set like that. Just kind of belonged, I think, to different people that were working on the film, and they just kind of kept them around. Not just like they didn't just like get the database of dog movements. They just kind of kept them around for that feel of having dogs around for the movie, which I thought was really cool. Puppetry, like the puppetry in this is great again, just like in Fantastic Mr. Fox. You have I think I read that there were like 7,000 faces. So they, instead of like there's more human, obviously way more human characters in this than there was in Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Right.
And so like when you have, I guess, like your stop motion human characters, their faces kind of will pop out to replace with different faces.
So that you can get different emotions without having to build a whole new puppet every time.
Right, exactly. And like there's only so much like that the little face, like the face muscle gadgets that they build into the wire can do, that like the different like sculpted faces can capture better, I guess.
Right.
And so they said that there were like over 7,000 different faces made for the characters, even like, so the lady that worked on Tracy, she hand painted by eye all of the freckles on all of Tracy's faces. And I think she said I think she knew the exact number. There was 297. I wrote down freckles on each Tracy face that she painted. And yeah, she painted them all like by eye, like I guess like matching the last one.
It's so impressive.
Yeah. And so I think she said she had painted over 22,000 freckles, which is crazy. But yeah, I think there were 12 sculptors, which is a big, apparently, I'm not familiar with what usually goes into stop motion animated movie, but apparently 12 sculptors is a lot of sculptors for a stop motion animated film. Obviously, like they use, just like Fantastic Mr. Fox, they use like real like animal fur.
I think alpaca wool, was that?
I think I read that somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't remember the source for that, so I'm not sure like I don't think it was on one of the featurettes, but I think I did read it somewhere. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like, they just dye it all kinds of different colors. And,
Sure.
But yeah, they have to poke all those hairs into the mold, like, of the animals, which is just, I don't know, that's crazy.
It's so much work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean the puppets are amazing, and then like once you get into the animation, they had a huge team of animators. They had 27 people animating, and then like 10 assistant animators too. So really like 37 people working on animating this movie. And I think like they would usually, I think somewhere I read or heard, they would have like up to or usually about 12 sets going at a time, which is a ton. One of the producers said that there was over 240 sets total that they used for this.
Oh, wow.
And even some of them are like, some of the sets are even only for like 3 to 4 second like sequences. like
the big city shots that you only see, maybe 2 or 3 times.
Right, yeah. And that actually, like, so the big, there's a 2 scenes that have like the Japanese skyline kind of like in it. And they actually built, I think he said like 150 or so buildings for that set to make like the Japanese skyline. And they used it in just those 2 sequences, which is crazy. But yeah, I mean, the one of the coolest things I think as far as like the design, like the production design, like, and the way they did the sets was the island itself, Trash Island.
Oh yeah, with all like the different environments.
Yeah. So like it's sectioned off, like or like sorted. Like the trash is sorted on different parts of the island. So like one part of the island is just like a bunch of paper. And then one part of the island is like kind of like feels like rusty car pieces everywhere. And so like each part of the island like you move through is like a different sort of trash. And so it has a different like color palette and a different like feel. And I thought that was really cool.
It is, yeah. Just all the different visual information.
Yeah, and I mean they were getting like, I don't know if it's like necessarily like actual trash, but like they're using like real that stuff like for real, like to
oh yeah, like I saw I think it was on one of the featurettes where like the animators were just like going out and just like dumping, like making like little messes with real garbage so that they could see like how it would scatter and how like different things would interact and move on the wind and stuff.
Yeah. That would, yeah. I don't remember if I saw that or not, but that's really cool. It just goes to show like the amount of work that goes in. I mean, even if like you watch this movie and you don't really go for the story, like you can't help but just like be amazed by what they're able to capture with the stop motion animation. It's really incredible. One thing that like stuck out to me too with just like the shot compositions, I guess, with this one that I didn't really see. I don't remember seeing a lot of, maybe one shot in Fantastic Mr. Fox, is the use of like silhouettes against like a brighter background. There's some really like beautiful shots of like a character silhouetted against a background in this one.
There are.
Yeah. And then even like some that are like more nefarious, like we mentioned the sumo match, when it pans down to the mayor, it's just his silhouette and like his advisor like whispering into him, and it's just their silhouettes. And like there's something like evil going on. So it's not beautiful in that way, but it looks beautiful like nonetheless.
Or like in the initial like press conference, whenever he's talking about banishing Spot, the original guard dog. And it pans over to the little compartment where they're gonna put him on the trolley to get, shipped over, and it's just like the operator in shadow, in silhouette, with like the room lit up behind him.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of that. It was something that, like, I scribbled in my notes as I was watching, because I kept seeing those like silhouette shots, and I was like, man, these are all like, they look so good. But yeah, one of the, I guess, like, as far as just like Wes signatures, like, he goes back to that kind of anamorphic widescreen, the 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio, that really widescreen. In this one, which I thought was like, you don't get that in Mr. Fox. Obviously Grand Budapest, Moonrise was not in that widescreen format. You get the 60s section of Grand Budapest is in that, but that's not a big part of the movie.
Right.
And so I was happy to see him going back to that format that he had used all the way up until Mr. Fox. Just because, like, it feels more Wes Anderson to me, I guess. But also, like, it's perfect for, like, those landscape shots get.
You really get to appreciate the full, like, beauty of these sets.
Yeah. So, I thought that was, like, a good choice. And you really get a lot of those dolly tracking shots where, you're following characters on a dolly. Just like, you're still kind of like, you still have that perpendicular shot composition that he uses. That it's you call it planimetric composition. It's where, like, you're face on to the characters. So, like, he obviously uses that a lot when he's doing, like, dialogue, where, like, they're perpendicular to the background, I guess, behind them. The way the camera faces the characters. But he also uses that. I guess they're more like parallel when you're doing like the shots where you're following them walking. You're kind of like parallel between them and the background. So I don't know if that would count as saying like it's planimetric composition, but you get the same feel out of that. And that's definitely like a Wes signature. One of the only other things that, like, I really wanted to point out was that Wes really doesn't use needle. He uses one needle drop kind of like moment in this one. It's the "I Won't Hurt You" song. Kind of after Chief, is starting to come around to being, I guess, domesticated by Atari.
Right.
You have that "I Won't Hurt You" song, which I think works really well in that scene. But yeah, he doesn't really use. It's kind of like he's moved away from that. I guess you got some of it in Moonrise, but yeah, he doesn't use a lot of Grand Budapest. He didn't really do it at all. And there's only one here, so I haven't rewatched French Dispatch yet, but I don't remember him really using it there either. So, but I could just not be remembering.
That's fair.
Yeah. So yeah, I wonder if Asteroid City will bring back that signature, like, Wes needle drop moment of, like, the song matching up perfectly with the scene sort of thing.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
I would like to see that come back.
Yeah,
but,
I would too.
At the same time, like, I get it. Yeah. If it doesn't work for the story that you're trying to tell, if you can't find that moment, then by all means.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like, just knowing how Wes makes films, he's not going to force something that doesn't work. Like, if it worked, he would have it there.
Yeah.
Just because, obviously, like, he enjoys that. But yeah, I don't know what. Just getting more into, like, the story of this this movie. What's something that really stood out to you, like, story wise or thematically, as you were watching this?
Sorry for all the dead air. I guess.
I mean, I can jump in.
No, sure. Yeah, you start us off.
Yeah, so I guess like one of the things that I guess one of the like biggest like things happening in the story is like Chief's transformation. Obviously, like this story in a way like on the Isle of Dogs sort of centers around Chief. And both his relationship to the other dogs and then his relationship with Atari. And you kind of get, he's similar but different, I guess, to some other like Wes main characters in the sense that like he, in this film, he's a dog. And so like he doesn't want to be domesticated.
Right.
But also, you get the sense as you keep watching that it's less because of this like rebel nature in him or this wild nature. That's definitely a part of it, but it's more of him being like self-aware of like who he is and the problems he has. Mm-hmm. So you think of like Max Fisher or Royal Tenenbaum or Steve Zissou, all these characters have these like similar dynamics where like they are for sure rough around the edges. Like they have these issues, but they're self-aware of them. Like they're not. I guess what I'm trying to say that like the comparison I'm trying to make is he's like those characters as like a Wes sort of character in the sense that like his problem is something that like he's aware of but doesn't know how to fix.
Right.
All those characters I named, like they know what their problem is, but they don't exactly know what to do about it.
Yeah. I can definitely see that with him.
Yeah. So like with Chief, the thing that he keeps saying is, I bite. And at first, like you think like, oh, that's like a threat, but it's not really a threat. You kind of learn as you go along that that's not so much a threat as like a warning.
Right. It's almost, he's almost afraid of himself in certain ways. Mm-hmm. He later on, whenever they find Spot and they find out that they're from the same litter, and his first question is, like, what was I the runt?
Yeah.
It's his insecurity. He doesn't know how to react to himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think part of that comes from it's kind of that stray nature. Like he doesn't know how to, just thinking about like broken relationships. So like oftentimes when you think of broken relationships, you think of like broken relationships with your family or with your friend group or whatever. And so that's there with him as a stray. Like he's spent a lot of time alone. He spent a lot of time like not having like good and healthy relationships with dogs or people. Mm-hmm. And so like those are definitely there, but like part of the result of that I think and maybe not like a result, it might be like a simultaneous thing. Like there's that broken relationship with the people going on, but there's also like a growing broken relationship with himself that is like that has grown to the point where like he doesn't even know like why he's rebellious. He doesn't know why he doesn't want to not obey anymore. Right. There's not really a reason behind it. He's just kind of like, this is what I do. And you get the sense that like he's not sure why he does it, but he also like he's not sure if he wants to change or not. I don't know. Like, it's hard to get a feel for him, for like how he feels until later in the movie. And I'm not sure if like that was there the whole time, like that sense of like, I am this way, but I want to change, or if like the want to change came later on, you know, through his relationship with Atari. You know, you have this scene where I think the pivotal scene for Chief is like the slide.
Yeah.
You know, you have Atari, you know, they pass like the pagoda slide, which is named after Kumar's character in Royal Tenenbaums.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And
I hadn't put that together.
Yeah, so which he had passed away, I think before Grand Budapest came out. So I think that was kind of like a little tribute to him. But yeah, you know, Atari like really wants to go on this slide, and you know, Chief is telling him like, you know, I wouldn't do that. Like, it's not a good idea. And then Chief tries to like walk away, like he doesn't care. And, you know, obviously Atari slides anyways and kind of like crashes. Then he's sitting there like he doesn't know where Chief went. And so he's sitting there whistling. And then finally, like, Chief kind of like grumbles and turns around and goes back, and like returns the whistle. And it's like this pivotal moment. And you almost get the sense that like he thought his nature was that stray mentality. But you almost get the sense that like that's his real like nature is to be kind and caring and like compassionate. But like his circumstances made him have that stray personality mentality that pushed him away from like his true nature, which when you think about a dog, like a dog's nature is to be loyal and to be like caring and to be, you know, really like, yeah, dogs just like, they love you like unconditionally. That's just kind of like how dogs work. And so, you know, it's almost like Chief's like stray, like rebel mentality is actually like not his true nature. Atari somehow like his interactions with him starts bringing him back to what his true nature is. And it's interesting, not just if it's just like he's just supposed to be a dog, then it's not really, it's sweet, but it's not as interesting as when you think about how these dogs are very much like stand-ins for humans.
Yeah.
And it makes you like think about like how all of our problems are actually like not how we're supposed to be. You know, we talk about like our nature is, oftentimes we talk about our nature as like we have tendencies toward all these bad things, and that's true, I think, to a certain extent, but we also know like it's not how we're supposed to be. We're actually supposed to be kind and compassionate and empathetic,
right?
Like that's how, you know,
the coldness and like the like distance and the ferocity, it's almost like learned behavior. It's something that gets instilled in you, you know, like interacting with the world and not, you know, just not, you know, not knowing who to trust and like having like trust betrayed and things like that.
Yeah. And too, like seeing yourself, like, you know, you have that interpersonal, but also like the relationship with yourself, like seeing yourself fail and seeing yourself like not live up to something, like you can, like you start to not trust yourself too. And I think that's where Chief is. And it takes like this kid who's, you know, who's like showing him the sort of love that normally a dog would also return, like caring for him, like trying to pet him, like, and not giving up to like keeping on trying to care for this dog that doesn't want him to care for him. Like, it brings him back to his nature. And I think that's like when you like remove the dogness and like insert like this is a stand-in for humanity, you know, it makes it like a very like humanistic I guess like theme going on there, of like, no, like actually like if we will show like kindness then others will like be kind too. Like, it's like a you know, you get, you know, those returns, like you know, it's like an investment. Like, you invest kindness, you get more kindness in return, sort of thing.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's something that I really like appreciated with Chief's character. His kind of character arc is like knowing that it is a stand-in for humanity. Like, you do get that very like sweet kind of outlook, you know, a very hopeful outlook, which is a nice change of pace after like Grand Budapest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Were there other things that kind of like, I don't know, talking through that made you think about?
I guess just like feeding off of that, kind of the thing that pushes him to change, I guess, would be like almost like, I guess, pity and like care for Atari. Like in that scene, like after he's come off the slide and he tries to get him to like fetch.
Right.
Like he finally goes, okay, well, I'm doing this because I feel sorry for you.
Right.
And it's like, you know, this kid who like, yes, is, you know, like a human, yes, is like a master, but this kid who's like helpless and doesn't know where to go, doesn't know what to do, has had brain damage done to him, that is kind of like in Chief's care. And it's kind of this position where, you know, the human interactions he had before, you know, people trying to domesticate him, you know, like he would have been the one receiving the help and the care. But, you know, this time they're depending on each other for, you know, healing. Like Atari, as much as Atari is teaching him to, you know, to trust humans again and to let him in and, you know, let himself, you know, learn that domestication. He's also like helping Atari with, you know, the hurt that he's feeling, you know, having lost his dog and, you know, the betrayal of his uncle. And,
literal guidance.
Yeah,
like,
literal
to where they're trying to go.
It's that mutual care. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And it kind of shows like why relationships are important, because like we are like, if you isolate yourself, like you get stuck in a loop of, you know, you can so easily get stuck in the loop of like self-deprecation. And like, but like we are like, humans are made like to be interacting with each other, in relationship with each other, and it helps. It's not just like because that's the necessity of like how things are, which, you know, obviously it is, but it's also because like that's how we grow, and that's how we like learn, and that's how we that's how we're made to be. You know, you can see it if you isolate yourself, like you're worse off than if you're like interacting with people and like exchanging love and care with other people. And so, yeah, that's definitely like another, like, I think good aside of like Chief is forced to like go back to his true nature, like because he's in a situation that's making him, it's almost like, you know, he says, I don't want to fetch, but I'm going to do it, you know, because I feel sorry for you. But it's almost like that act of, sometimes like it works from the outside in, like changing and being more like caring.
Right.
You know, oftentimes we're like, oh, you just have to like make yourself care and then you do the caring act. Well, like, yeah, sometimes, but sometimes like doing the caring act like makes you care. Like it works from the outside in sometimes. Like I think about like sometimes like I really don't want to like, clean up after like my kid again or like, that sort of thing.
Sure.
And like I don't want to, and I have like a bad attitude, but I have to do it. And so I do it. And like in the act of doing it, like, you grow the empathy for like this kid that like doesn't know any better or like didn't mean to. And like in the act of caring, you actually like start to care. And I think that's part of what's happening with Chief. Like why he's changing is because, yeah, he is put in this situation where he's kind of being forced to care, even if he doesn't want to, which leads to him wanting to, the scene where Spots, like hands over Atari to him to care for is like a really emotional scene. Like there's a bunch of scenes, not a bunch, but there's several scenes where like you have dogs with like teary eyes, and I like that got me every time. I don't know what it is about it, but like you would think just like the emotional dog face would be enough, but you add the teary eyes in there, and I'm like, oh man,
yeah.
So emotional.
There's almost a like wedding like feel to that scene, like the
yeah
like an exchange of vows, and yeah, it's a powerful scene.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, I agree for sure. Yeah, one thing I feel like we do have to talk about, and this is as good a time as any, as like, is this film like just like an appreciation of Japan, or is it an appropriation of Japan? That I know when this came out, that was like a lot of the talk around it was that, and so I think it's something you kind of doing a deep dive on this, you do have to like address. But yeah, there's one of the more popular reviews that came out, I think in the LA Times, that was kind of negative on that aspect of this film. Some of the things it talked about was like the lack of subtitles for the Japanese characters, which, is a part of this film. It was a decision that Wes made to not subtitle the Japanese characters when they talk. This guy, the way he felt about it was that it reduces like what they're saying down to like simple statements that like aren't as meaningful, that because you have to kind of like make it to where like you can understand from facial expressions and like context what they're saying, and so like I guess like the way he felt about it was like it kind of dehumanizes them in a way, and then like I think one of the lines he said was that like you almost end up reducing the people of Megasaki, which we haven't talked about the name of the city, Megasaki. Right. What a great name for the city.
Yes.
He said it reduces the people of Megasaki to like foreigners in their own, like in their own city. Which, I understand where he's coming from for sure. And like, it is like, he did feel like that was underscored by having Tracy, who is like the American,
right,
from Cincinnati for an exchange student, kind of like be the leader in a sense in this like student revolt against like the mayor and his like, fascist regime, which, I totally like understand that perspective. I don't know that I like agree with that, but also like I am a white American, so like my perspective only goes so far in that.
Sure.
Like I can't tell someone who is Japanese how they should feel
same
about it. And so like Yeah, did you have any thoughts on that that kind of like discussion around this movie?
I one thing that I did think of. So I watched the movie, I think probably Friday night, and then I watched it again today, and I had already looked over your outline a little bit, so I had seen that this section was coming up.
Yeah.
And one thing that stood up to me was with Tracy specifically, was like, yes, she's the one that you're like thinking of as the hero the whole time, but then at the end of the film, she's not the one that saves the day. Like for everything they try to do, they actually end up failing, and it's the hacker kid that actually saves the day.
That's true.
And would have regardless, because he was able to infiltrate them and sabotage them. Like, even if the plan had gone off without a hitch, his plan still would have worked. He still would have saved all the dogs.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing with her character too is part of the reason her character existed is because of the nature of like not subtitling the Japanese characters. You've got to have someone that like is making sense of it in that certain section. But also like even in the revolt, like, it's not, the students they push back on her at the beginning. I feel like the other students, the journalism students, they're like, well, you need to prove it's just a conspiracy theory. You need some proof. And so like she feels strongly about it. And she goes and gets some proof. And then they're like, okay, yeah, we're in on the revolt.
Right.
And then like when you have her to be the one on the megaphone, I guess like from a filmmaking perspective, it's like, well, it's easier to do that than to have one more thing like translated. But like I get how that can come across from just like a viewer perspective as like, well, like why is like the little white girl the one like coming in with the megaphone leading the revolt, like screaming at these Japanese people in English, like
right.
Like I guess like you kind of get like it kind of creates a better foil between her and the mayor too, though, I guess, in a way. But yeah, I can understand the perspective for sure of how it can feel weird.
Yeah.
And I guess that's really all I can say. To me, obviously, like there was so much about this movie that felt like appreciation. That part of it wasn't enough to make me say like, oh, this is appropriation. To like put that label on the whole film, the film as a whole.
Right.
And like too, like knowing like how much Kunichi Nomura had input on this, and like was like making sure the minuteness of details was like accurate to Japanese culture. Just like, well, like I really think like this is a film that really appreciates like Japanese culture and Japanese, like, I mean, I think the sushi scene that we talked about earlier is like a really good example of how like you just see the appreciation for that art form coming through. It doesn't feel like a joke,
No,
it doesn't feel like it's making a joke of sushi, which you can eat. Like, it would be very easy for an American director to like just make stereotypical jokes about everything, like, ooh, like, raw fish, whatever, but you see an appreciation for it, I think. And I think you do with a lot of the stuff going on.
I agree. Yeah, care definitely comes through.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, Wes is an American, trying to make a movie set in a foreign country. Like, there's only so much you can do, but the care comes through.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah.
Right. And I think something that so I listened to another film podcast called Film Spotting, and I went back and listened to their review on this when it came out, and one of the co-hosts there, I'm pretty sure it was Josh Larson, is one of the hosts of that show. He was saying that he felt like the Japanese setting was like crucial to the political aspect of this film. And so like he basically like is, basically he's saying like what it almost feels like what Wes and like the way they wrote this is they're flipping like America and Japan, and really like when you're watching like things happening with the Japanese, you're really watching like America. And so he said like you can't watch this. I guess you can, but like for him, like it was like in the back of his mind of like the Japanese internment camps in World War II here in America.
Oh, I could see that.
Yeah. And so like you have like the dogs they're humanized in such a way where they feel human.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you have them exiled onto this island for all these like very like not real reasons.
Right.
Just like excuses.
Right. Just being rounded up and
yeah.
Being the fear of the other.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you have that, and I mean, and it's because it's in a Japanese setting, that as an American is something that like should come to mind. It didn't necessarily for me, but when I heard him say that, I was like, wow, yeah, like that makes sense. And really like, it's funny because you almost like, you watch this and you almost feel like emotionally associated with like the heroes of the story, but really like as an American, like watching it, you feel like emotionally associated with the heroes, but really at the end of the day, like America as a whole, like as a nation, like really identifies more with like the mayor and the corrupt government.
Sure.
As far as like the internment camps go and whatnot.
And even like one parallel that kind of stood out for me was with like the dog flu in particular, with like the AIDS crisis back in the 80s, and like the way that it was almost like it almost got weaponized into like this this thing of like, oh, well, we're not going to invest in the research. We're not going to invest in like educating people on this, to promote that, that fear of like, oh, well, we have these groups that, we want to associate as like, being scary, and that we want to otherize, and,
right.
Saying like, so we're going to suppress this information, and we're going to, suppress treatment, and, deny that, treatment works and stuff like that.
Right. And even like moving forward in history from this movie, like to COVID, I mean, you don't have like suppressing of like medical advancements and like trying to find a cure for COVID, but you do have like, we need to deport people. We need to like close off other countries. We need to like, a lot of that feels very like, I guess it's like the cyclical nature of like how politics works in history. And Wes even kind of talked about that. You get like, so he was talking about how like when they were thinking about like the revolts and the civil unrest, they were actually thinking more of like, in France, there's like the May 1968 like civil unrest. That's like a big thing in history for France.
I didn't know much about that going into. I read like a little bit of the Wikipedia article earlier today because I had seen that in an interview too.
Yeah.
But I didn't know a whole lot about it going in.
Yeah, I didn't either. But that was apparently like part of the influence there. And so like they were making this, and they just like they they actually like they started making the film in 2015, like the fall of 2015, and then October 2016 they started filming it. So this is like they're starting to write and like come up with what this movie is going to be like before like presidential like election stuff really starts picking up steam. And then like by the time they're starting to like actually like film and animate it, like you have the presidential election coming up, and like just imagine like making this film with these political themes in it of just like xenophobia, like fascism, like you know, that there's that like demagogic strain of like American politics. Like you're making this film, you had already written it, like you're starting to animate it, and like just the headlines that are coming out. Like an interview, Wes was like, you know, we just had no idea that the headlines would match what, you know, we're speaking out against in this movie politically, like as we're making it.
Right.
Like they didn't, like the movie comes out in 2018, you know, 2 years into a presidency that like has a lot of, you know, these, that brings out a lot of these strains in American politics. And
did you watch the Lincoln Center interviews?
I think so, yeah.
At the end, they're kind of talking about the political like situation at the time and like the coincidence of it kind of lining up. And he's like, yeah, actually, like during the screening, the like headlines came out that like our I think it was like our foreign affairs administrator like got let go because of corruption. Yeah, like while they were actually like screening. Yeah. Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like we had no idea that this would happen, but also like it's not surprising because this sort of thing, there's a cycle of this in like human politics. Yeah. Unfortunately. I just found it very like interesting. I did want to like mention, you know, we'll jump back to something that I think needed to be said about like the appropriation thing, and then jump back into the politics. Sure. The whole like language and subtitle thing, to me, like to not subtitle when I'm watching a film, as you know, this is just from my perspective. If I'm watching a film and it's not subtitled, I get the sense of like an appreciation of the language, and like the humanity of like watching someone else like from a different culture speaking a different language interact and not understanding the words that are being said, but still understanding like the common humanity. And so like just because I can't understand what you're saying, it doesn't make you less human, and it doesn't make what you're saying less valuable.
Right. And it's, you know, so like really the only time that happens in the movie where you have no idea what they're saying is with the human and dog interactions. So like, you know, there's even like a little joke at one point, like, I wish someone like spoke his language, sort of thing, the dogs saying that. But yeah, it seems like every time there's like human interaction going on, there's a translator, or there's like, you have this scene where like the little machine is actually like speaking in English what's going on. You know, you have like the science lab where like it's, instead of like them saying like, oh, we've cured it, like we've made the antidote or whatever for the flu, they have the little machine printing out so that you can read in English that it's like good to go, that like they've cured it. Right. Which that scene I love, like the mechanics of like all the science lab stuff going on was really fun. And
the little punchline at the end where like it looks like they're going to do another treatment, but it's actually just like them pouring shots into test tubes to celebrate. So like
you have all these like creative ways to like get across to the English speaking audience like what's happening with the human interactions, but then like really like the human to dog interactions, like where the human's talking to the dog, like it makes sense that you're not going to understand one of them.
Yeah, it's like a perspective reversal.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, to me that doesn't come across as like appropriating. It comes across as one, like being creative in the way you translate. Instead of subtitling, I'm going to let you hear in Japanese what's being said and then like have a translator translate for you, which is how it would happen in real life, really.
Yeah.
If you were there. Or I'm going to let you hear this person talking Japanese. You're from the perspective of the dogs now. You don't know what they're saying. There's no translator around. So I don't know. I get the sense more of like an appreciation for the language than I did like an appropriation of the culture and language, as far as that goes. But yeah, jumping back into the politics of everything, I think one thing that like stood out to me, you have the mayor. It's funny because like thinking about like where we were politically when this movie came out, you have a mayor like saying things blatantly, like in his like speeches, that you would think like no politician would ever say things so blatantly in their speeches. And yet, like, we've now had, like, at this point, a couple of years of a president that is blatantly saying, like, terrible things in his speeches, unapologetically. And I don't know, it's almost like when they were writing this movie, like, little did they know it was, like, prophetic in a way of what was coming. But then, like, which is something that's like very like American in the way like that the politics are for this like mayor and everything. But then like something happens that feels very un-American as far as like politics go, which is when Atari comes and he gives his speech and his haiku there like at the final rally or whatever. The mayor is so touched by what he says, which Atari even like thanks him for bringing him in when he was like astray, which is like a sign of compassion, like and love for for who should be like your enemy in that situation, and that like extension of like compassion and love and grace for someone who is your enemy, like actually like touched the mayor and like he repented.
Yeah,
there on stage, like he says like I have no honor, and he reverses like everything he did, and it's like I was fairly moved, like I guess like I was moved more thinking back on it than I was in the moment, but like it is very like hopeful and moving. It's kind of like Wes and the other guys that wrote with him kind of like giving you this hope that we are like just like Chief has his moment of transformation, like the mayor has his moment of transformation where like he's touched too by Atari just like Chief was, and he has this moment where like maybe he's returning to who he really is in this moment. Like he's realizing I've had no honor because of my ambition to succeed. And I need to go back to who I really am, which is a person that is caring and loving and human.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just felt like that was very prescient, I guess, for the American viewer to see like the politician actually like change. It felt very hopeful, I guess.
That does. I don't know that I have that much hope for our politics, but
same.
it's a message I wish I could resound with. If if it doesn't actually resonate with me, I wish it would.
Yeah, and I guess like obviously like it's hard to believe that would actually happen in American politics, but it also like speaks to the longing that we have for that sort of like owning of, someone owning what they've done. That's such a big leader, in a politician. It speaks toward like that longing that we have, that our leaders would be trustworthy and that sort of thing. So I appreciated it in that sense. But I think like what's even more prescient watching as an American viewer is like the question that Atari asks in his speech, which is he asks, who are we? I want to say it right. I have it written down over here. He asks, who are we and what do we want to be? And so he says that as Tracy's translating into her little recorder. I guess for herself, for her journal,
right?
Her journalism. She's translating his speech like as he's saying it, and he says in Japanese, "Who are we and who do we want to be?" But then he pauses and the camera shifts to him, and he in English says, "Who are we?" Which is just like, I don't know, thinking back on that, it's very apparent and very like powerful, like a question for the American audience. Like you're watching this film that's reflecting back to you, allowing, and this is part of what Wes Anderson does with his movies, part of why he makes such like fantastical, like dollhouse-esque movies, is because this idea of like pulling you out of it, where you can look at it, from afar, so that it's almost like counterintuitive. Like you look at it removed from yourself so that you can see it better. Instead of like forcing you into the story, you're able to like hold it out here and like really look at it, so that you can see what he's trying to get across, like even better than you could if it was like more realistic. And so like watching it in this Japanese setting as an American, and then all of a sudden like he's speaking in English to you, it's that close up of his face, and he's looking right at you like through the screen and asking, who are we? And I think as an American viewer watching that, I think that's a very prescient question that we have to ask. Like, who are we? Like, are we a nation that's divided? Are we a nation that's going to tolerate, dogmatism and fascism and that sort of stuff? Like, who are we? And it doesn't necessarily give an answer. Wes isn't trying to like answer that question.
No.
But he is asking the question.
It's just the giving of the challenge.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which I think is important, and I think is a big part of what this movie is. But yeah, going off that, just like the final thought for this movie, coming off of that question of who are we is, I think about watching this movie, and we talked about how like there's such like moving, a couple of like really moving scenes with the dogs, and like you grow this huge empathy for these dog characters. Mm-hmm. And like even like just thinking about like the empathy we have for our pets, why, I don't know, it begs the question to me anyways, like of why are we such able to in this story extend such like empathy to these dog characters, as humanized as they are, and also to like our pets, but yet like it's so hard for us to extend empathy and grace toward like actual real fellow human beings. I don't know, that's just something that like really I was thinking about after watching this, because I was moved by the dogs, right?
Sure.
And like I have like had pets that like I was very moved by, and like when they were hurt, or I was like able to show pity to when, they did something they weren't supposed to do. But like, it's so hard for us to do that with other human beings. I don't know. Do you have like any thoughts at all on why that is?
I guess there's something about maybe the helplessness of like the animals like in our lives. Not helplessness, but that sense of responsibility, I guess, that we have towards them.
And they're, I guess, like, not, you said not helplessness, but maybe like dependence.
Yeah. That sense
like they depend on us.
Right. Yeah. Like it, if I don't feed my cat, he's going to starve, whereas, and there is something to say, for that with, other people of like, yeah, if we don't look after each other, if we don't care for each other, like you were saying earlier, we're made to, be in relationship and in community. If we don't look after each other, we're so much worse off.
Right.
But it's I don't know, I guess there's something we expect people to have, to have things together, I guess, more than we do with animals. With an animal, we're like, oh, well,
it's an animal.
Yeah, it's an animal. It's helpless. I've got to look after it. I've got to take care of it. But, when it comes to people, it's like, oh, well, why don't you fix all your problems?
Right.
Why is it my problem?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think for one thing, that's, feels like a very Western mindset. But also like our world today is so like melded together, like all the cultures that like, it feels like it could just be a human problem that we have in general of like, we feel like, why should I be responsible for something that you did? I should only be responsible for what I've done. And we have that mindset. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so hard for us to extend empathy. We feel like, the problems that have happened in your life are largely the result of, choices that you've made, not choices that I've made. And so why should I be responsible for something that you should have been responsible for? But like at the same time, like we have our own, like we would want that sort of help if we were in that situation. And so it's like, I guess like the hypocrisy of our like tendency toward that sort of thinking. And I think you're right. I think you nailed it. Like the reality is like, we do need each other. Mm-hmm. Like we should be willing to extend empathy towards someone else. Like, because at the end of the day, like our pets depend on us, like for life and for like care. When we have a pet, like we're expected to feed them, take care of them, make sure they live a good, cared for life. Well, the reality is like our fellow human beings depend on us too. And we depend on other human beings too. It's just the extent of how much we can deceive ourselves into thinking like everything we are and everything we have is all because we got it and we did it. And I think that's where the deceit comes in our own minds. Like we deceive ourselves into thinking like, I've made myself who I am. I've gotten myself like where I am, whatever success or whatever like accomplishments or whatever it may be. Like we deceive ourselves into thinking that's all just because of me.
Yeah. We don't think about, all the other work that goes into our lives.
Right. Yeah. We've been influenced by other people. We've had opportunities because of other people. We get paychecks because of other people. Like if you have like built yourself up from the bottom and like have a business, like you're paid because people are consuming your product. Mm-hmm. Like, and so at the end of the day, like there's no person on earth that's not dependent on other people. Like, and so I don't know, just like thinking about this, like, why is it so easy for us to show empathy to pets? And I think it's just because it's easier for us to see the dependency there. And I guess like it's harder for us to see how much we really depend on other people. Just, I guess, because we've deceived ourselves into thinking that like we have made ourselves who we are.
Right.
And I think that's something like good to reflect on coming off of this film. Like, who are we as a nation? Like, you know, the question that Tari is asking us as Americans, but also like who are we going to be as like individuals, as communities, like starting with like yourself and moving out, expanding like to neighborhoods and communities and cities and, you know, states and countries and whatnot. You know, you can ask that question at all of those levels.
Right.
And it's a question I think we have to, it's just a good question to ask ourselves. Like, am I being like the kind of person that I'm really supposed to be? You know, like Chief realizes he's supposed to be, and like the mayor realizes he's supposed to be. You know, he even gives his kidney to Tari in the end. And I had seen someone had written an article I had read that it's almost like the inverse of seppuku, which is, you know, the samurai, you know, falling on his own sword,
right?
To you know, I guess like die in honor, or I don't know exactly what it's supposed to mean, but
sure.
But it's almost like a life-giving version of seppuku, sorry, which I think is a cool way to think about, you know, what the mayor does.
That is.
And, yeah. But yeah, you know, just this idea of reflecting on who we are as a nation, but also just as humans, being a human and being willing to show empathy to other humans because we too are human, you know? But yeah, that was my final thought on this film.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, just to wrap things up, I like to do the meaningless ratings, because ratings really are like meaningless at the end of the day. But yeah, what would you rate Isle of Dogs?
Let's see. Let me pull up my my Wes Anderson letterbox list real quick.
Okay, while you're pulling that up, I'll say this. I originally, when I first saw this movie, I gave it 4.5 stars, 9 out of 10, and it was pretty high up on my Wes rankings. When I watched it this time, I think I appreciate it in different ways now than I did when I first saw it. And so originally, like, I thought I might move it down to an 8, but then I was like kind of going through like the different aspects of the filmmaking and everything, and I was like, no, I think it's staying a 9. But it did move down a little bit in my rankings. I still have it as like about 6 in my Wes Anderson rankings.
Gotcha.
But it, for me, it is, you know, just reflecting on it afterwards. I think there's a lot more depth to it than I necessarily like felt in the moment when watching it this time around. So yeah, it's a really good Wes Anderson movie. A lot going on here that we didn't even like touch on, you know.
Definitely.
But yeah.
Yeah, so I have it as I guess an 8. I've got it as, you know, 4 stars on Letterboxd. It's actually 4th on my Wes Anderson list at the moment, behind Mr. Fox, Bottle Rocket, and Grand Budapest.
Great, yeah.
There's still a couple that I haven't seen. Moonrise Kingdom, I still need to see. which I'll be catching up for on the podcast episode that's already came out. And French Dispatch I still need to see. But yeah, at the moment it's fourth in my list.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think it was that high for me at one point, and just rewatching these, going through this series, I just like really love some of these other ones.
Oh, I've loved everything so far. I'm a big animation like nerd, I guess. Like
right.
I love animation and just like the work that goes into it and that kind of thing. So I guess it's a little bit higher on my list because of that.
Yeah,
probably.
That makes sense. I get that for sure. But that's Isle of Dogs. Hope you enjoyed the discussion. We'll be talking about the French Dispatch next week, which at the time of this recording is the last film Wes Anderson released. But by the time this recording comes out, there will be Asteroid City. So, his 10th film, The French Dispatch, we will touch on next week. So I'm excited to have that discussion on that film. But for now, we're going to take a break and come back with a little bit of movie news and a stop motion animation draft. Just spoiler alert. I usually don't let you know ahead of time, but that's what we're going to do when we come back. So we'll see you in just a minute. Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on the Establishing Shot today. We hope you're enjoying the episode so far, and we hope you'll stick around for the segments we have coming up after this quick break. But during this break, I wanted to tell you how you can get more involved with the Establishing Shot podcast. There are several ways you can do this. The main way you can do it is by going to establishingshotpod.com, our website where you can find all sorts of information like episodes with the show notes on there, information about our guests for each episode. You can find reviews there, and there's a page where you can actually leave a review on the website if you want to. You can see all the platforms where the podcast is available, like Apple, Spotify, all the major podcast platforms, and even a link to our YouTube page where you can see a video version of the podcast. So please go to the website. And the place I want to highlight there is our donate page, which has information about our Establishing Shot family. This is a way that you can subscribe to the podcast to support all the efforts and the stuff that goes into making this podcast good and making it better than it even is now. We have different tiers that you can subscribe to, starting at $5. And what this will do is you'll be able to support the podcast, help me make it better, and also at the same time, you'll get early and ad-free episodes. You'll get access to our Discord server where you can join in and just kind of talking about movies with a community that loves film. And so we would love to have you in there. And then the higher up in the tiers you go, the more you get. Even things like chats and video chats that we'll do every once in a while where we get to talk about in more detail stuff that we're talking about on the podcast. So I hope you'll subscribe to that. Choose a tier that fits your budget, and I would love for you to support the podcast in that way. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is where you can find us on social media. You can find me personally on Twitter at @DEliPrice, and you can also follow me on Letterboxd. Letterboxd is kind of like a social media for movie reviews, so you can read my reviews there, and you can find me there at just Eli Price, no spaces or anything. So I'm on Twitter and Letterboxd. You can find the podcast on all the social platforms as well, such as Twitter at eShotPod, and then on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok at Establishing Shot Pod. So make sure to follow us so you don't miss anything. If you have any questions or comments about the episode or about the podcast, you can always email us at establishingshotpod@gmail.com. And the very last thing I want to do before you get back into the episode today is just ask you to please go to Spotify and Apple and leave some ratings and reviews. That really helps the visibility of the podcast and gets it in more people's podcast feeds. And so we hope you will do that for us, and we would greatly appreciate it. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode, and I will see you next time on the Establishing Shot podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for sticking around. Hope you enjoyed the Isle of Dogs talk. But yeah, now we're back. We're going to touch on some movie news. The weekend that this podcast is releasing is also the going to be the weekend that the new Mission Impossible comes out.
Yeah.
So Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, the first of the last two Mission Impossible movies, allegedly. At least with Tom Cruise. So for movie news, I was just, thinking about like Tom Cruise is in his 60s now, still making these like wild action movies. And I was just trying to think of like how many actors like in their 60s or older are still like making these sorts of action movies, and like and how long can they go about doing that sort of movie? Like I was thinking, when was the last time like Denzel Washington was like actually like doing action in an action movie? And I feel like it's been a while for him. But maybe not. Maybe it's just like the stuff he's done.
Yeah, he's definitely shifted. Not that he, didn't do like, more dramatic work.
Yeah.
But he's really kind of honed in on that lately, it feels like.
Yeah, and he's always had that. It's almost like you think of like, I guess like an athlete. I watch a lot of football, so like I think about like an athlete as he gets older, has to start relying more on like the technique and whatnot, more so than like just the pure athleticism.
Mm-hmm.
Just because like, well, their body's wearing down, so they have to rely more on like their football knowledge to like really compete well,
right?
Than like just their pure just athletic ability. And it's almost like, at what point as an actor, like, do you have to just start relying more on like your acting prowess and like ability to like do different roles than just like your ability to, do your own stunts or like just like be an action hero, have that kind of persona about you. I don't know. And, Tom Cruise is like for sure like pushing the limits, I think.
Oh, sure. He tries to do as much of his own stuff as he can.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, I guess there's a little bit of a difference, like with Tom Cruise doing that versus like, like Harrison Ford is coming out with, Indy 5 later this summer.
Right.
And, he's even, much more older than Tom Cruise is.
Right.
But, he's not gonna be, I'm sure he does some of that stuff, but he's not trying to do everything himself,
Right.
He's not out there learning to fly helicopters and
right.
fighter jets and
yeah, and that is something like that like is for sure to be said about Tom Cruise, is like he really like just enjoys the endeavor of like making a movie and like doing cool things, like in capturing like himself doing cool things on film.
Yeah. which I get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is totally like respectable and like and cool. A lot of it is cool. To see like a man actually hanging off the side of an airplane is like, it's pretty cool.
It is.
But yeah, I don't know. It just makes me think how, and actors, like different actors are going to have like different kind of breaking points, but I mentioned Denzel, and really like the only things he's done recently where he's doing like, I guess what you would call like action is, he's done the Equalizer films, which I haven't seen, so I don't know how much he's like doing in those.
Yeah, I haven't seen those either.
But like, some of his more recent stuff is, Tragedy of Macbeth, Fences, the Roman J. Israel Esquire. You have a Flight, which, I guess he's doing a little bit more. I don't think that he's doing a whole lot of action stuff in Flight.
I don't think so.
But
if that's the movie I'm thinking of, I don't think he is either.
Yeah, but really, like, I mean, you have some like the Two Guns movie that came out with him and Mark Wahlberg. That was 2013. Yeah, he's just not doing a ton of like action heavy stuff anymore. I'm not sure exactly how old Denzel is. I guess I can type it in as I talk. But 68. So yeah, he's got a few years on Tom Cruise. I think Tom Cruise is like 60 or 61 at this point.
That sounds right.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess there comes a point to where like for Tom Cruise, like Tom Cruise doesn't look like he's 60.
No.
He looks maybe like a weathered like late 40s kind of like but he doesn't look 60, and I think part of that's part of it too. Just as much as like your ability to like move as an action hero is like, do you still look like an action hero?
Sure. Yeah. And I, for something like that, being Tom Cruise and, having the money to devote to keeping yourself in, peak condition, going into, that later stage of your life, that has to help a lot.
Right.
But also, like devoting those resources towards that, that's time and resources that you don't have to put towards other things. So I guess it's, where are your priorities? What are your commitments?
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about like, so for instance, like Keanu Reeves, like with John Wick, Keanu Reeves is in his 50s. And he's, I don't know if you've seen John Wick 4.
I haven't seen 4 yet.
Yeah. So in 4, he falls a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, if it's actually Keanu falling a lot, but he is doing a lot of the stunt work.
Oh yeah. Most of the fighting, definitely. In the John Wick movies. Stuff like falling, that's the type of thing that I would almost expect them to switch out with a stunt double.
Yeah. And like, when I say he falls a lot, I really mean he falls a lot. Like, I'm just like, how many times is this guy going to fall in this movie? And not just like, I mean, he's falling off of bridges and out of, windows, stories. I mean, it's just, why are they, like, what is their thing with him falling in this one? Yeah. So, but the thing about John Wick to me is like, part of the character is how like tired he is. That's just like it's kind of part of like what's going on with that character, and his kind of the feel that character has is he's tired. So like there is a degree to which like I think you can be old and look old and still like do some action movie work, just if that's like the feel for the character you're going for. Like I want to say, like Clint Eastwood has probably done a few movies like in his later life where he is like, it is sort of like action going on, but like he's old and he looks old, and the character's supposed to look old.
And you feel that coming through in the character.
Right. And so like there is still like, I guess, a place for that. But yeah, just kind of something fun to think about, like how long can an action hero actor like keep being an action hero actor, But yeah, I don't have any like profound thoughts on that. Just something fun to think about.
Yeah. As long as the insurance companies will write them off, I guess.
Hey, yeah. But yeah, I'm all for it. Like Tom Cruise, if this gets to you, don't stop, hanging off of airplanes.
Respect for the craft.
As long as you can. But yeah, so I guess we can go ahead and move into our movie draft. I'm kind of excited.
Yeah, me too.
We've done Fantastic Mr. Fox stop motion. We've done Isle of Dogs stop motion now. So let's do a stop motion animation draft.
Yeah.
We're gonna draft 5 each. Partly, we were kind of talking in the break. I have enough to draft more on my list, but also like the ones at the bottom I don't really love a whole lot, or like they're just okay to me. So I don't really want to draft them. So we're gonna stick to 5 so that we can get a really good, 2 lists of 5, 10 total for you guys to maybe check out some if you haven't. But yeah, you're a first time guest, so I concede the first pick to you. That being the case, so yeah, if you want to go ahead and jump right in with your first pick.
Sure. So my first pick, and I guess the way I ordered my list, I don't know that I'm necessarily trying to win.
Okay.
But I don't know. I kind of went part way for like, oh, these are like good movies that I wish more people would see.
Right.
And also like just a little bit of like, I think these could win me some points.
Yeah.
But so for my first one, I'm gonna go with Kubo and the Two Strings.
Okay.
Which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love this movie. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it also kind of like sticks on the theme of Isle of Dogs, of like this American animators trying to pay tribute to Japan.
That's true. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen it once. I think I actually watched it with you.
That sounds right. Yeah,
we watched it kind of as a family, and I remember enjoying it. I didn't like love it, but I did really enjoy it. Really well made and like impressive animation for sure.
Oh, it's a gorgeous movie to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a good pick. I think and I didn't mention it at the beginning, but like I try to like not draft the movie that we talked about. So obviously like Isle of Dogs would probably be high up on both of our lists, but yeah, we'll set it aside.
Go. I was gonna say like I even did that. Like I left Fantastic Mr. Fox off my list.
Yeah.
Kind of for the same reason. Like I feel like it's a Wes Anderson, episode. You just talked about Fantastic Mr. Fox a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I feel like people know Fantastic Mr. Fox is fantastic.
It's fantastic. We don't need to draft it. Yeah. Yeah, I wish I could start off drafting Fantastic Mr. Fox, but I do feel the same way. Let's get some other stuff in here. So I'm going to just start off right off the bat, just drafting probably the stop motion animation movie that I've seen the most and just love watching. I watch it every year, and that's Nightmare Before Christmas. I love that movie. The music is great, and just like the way that Selleck just captures like, I don't know, just like the horror of things and things that are kind of gross with his stop motion. I just love it. And so Jack Skellington is like just an A+ character, like top notch. So yeah, that's one that I've just loved for a long time. Whenever I watch it, I'll have like the song stuck in my head for weeks. Yeah, that's going to be my number one choice. Nightmare Before Christmas. So yeah,
it's a great choice.
Yeah, where are you going to go with your second pick?
My second pick is going to be GDT's Pinocchio.
Oh man, okay. I'm really upset now because that's what I really wanted to get.
I figured it would be somewhere on your list, so I went ahead and put it. I went ahead and put it kind of high up so that I would have a better chance of getting it. But yeah, it's like, I don't know, just the watching it, it's really amazing. It's just an amazing movie to watch. All the different all the different like ways of like doing the puppetry and just the attention and the backgrounds and I don't know. It's a fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, it's only a few years old. So if you haven't seen it, I think it's on Netflix.
Yeah, I think it actually came out last year, didn't it?
That's right. Yeah, it was last year.
And this isn't like the bad Disney movie with Tom Hanks, Pinocchio, that came out last year.
No.
This is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which I think he had to name it that because there was that other one coming out the same year.
Right. Disney's kind of been doing this thing where with their, live action remakes of their movies, there have been a couple of them, Jungle Book being the other one.
Yeah.
Where there were kind of these, auteur filmmakers coming out with like their versions of these classic stories and Disney going, oh crap, we want to make that money.
Yeah.
So they kind of rushed out their live action version.
Right.
Because they already had, that in their repertoire from back in the day.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, that's definitely something that, I don't know. We've talked about it before on the podcast, but yeah, I loved Del Toro's Pinocchio. It's very, very like emotionally, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, just like the depth of emotion in that one, and like, it's just an incredible movie. And then the animation, like I think of that shot, like going through the circus, like the camera, like you have like really interesting camera movements happening alongside like the obviously like the puppets moving for the animation, but yeah, that really incredible scene and movie. So that really like throws me for a loop.
Sorry,
I was really hoping to get that one. But yeah, that's part of the game. So I'm going to go ahead and draft. Oh, man. I guess I'll stick with Henry Selick and go ahead and draft Coraline.
Oh, good choice.
Yeah, Coraline is, for one, like Neil Gaiman, he's a great author. He does, he has a lot of like novels. Coraline is actually a children's book that he wrote. He does some comic stuff too with the Sandman and stuff like that, which I think there's a Netflix series based off of those comics now too.
Gotcha. I didn't realize.
Yeah. But yeah, Coraline is, I read the book years ago. It's a great little book. The way that Selick captures that, like the creepiness of it, like, like I was saying with Nightmare Before Christmas, is just like really great. The buttons, like, which is part of like the book too, like in the kind of like inverse world, like there's the parents have like, the people have like button eyes,
right?
And the way like that's just like perfect for like stop motion. It's like if you were to write a book with hopes that stop motion was going to be made, a stop motion movie was going to be made of it. That's like a detail that you would definitely put in there.
It works so well.
But yeah, Coraline is a great one. So yeah, I guess I've got this Henry Selick draft going here.
Fair enough. So I guess for my number 3, I'll go with Chicken Run.
Okay. Chicken Run.
Yeah.
It's a classic.
It is, and it's so much fun.
It is.
And also has a little bit of a Wes Anderson through line with George Clooney, Mr. Fox himself, playing the rooster.
Yeah. I didn't think about that. It's been a while since I've seen Chicken Run. It was on my list because it's a great movie, but it has been a long while since I've seen it. So it's not like totally fresh on my mind.
That's fair. It's been a couple years since I've seen it too. But yeah, just a charming, good time of a movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, my third choice, I'm gonna go with another movie. So like Pinocchio was one of my favorite movies last year, but this one I liked even more. And I don't know if a ton of people saw it, but I'm gonna go with Marcel the Shell with Shoes On.
I need to catch up on this.
Yes,
this is one that's on my list.
And I would have honestly taken it first overall. It's probably my favorite movie, like on my list of stop motion movies.
That's good to know.
It was such a breath of fresh air, like of a movie. Just it's very like gentle and quiet and sweet, and I don't know how they like took these like viral YouTube videos that came out like over a decade ago and made this like very sweet, like precious movie that like somehow like made me cry at a like talking shell. But yeah, it pulled it off. It's fantastic. Yeah, I highly recommend watching Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. And it's funny too. It's very funny.
It has to be with a name like that.
Yeah. But yeah, okay. Your fourth pick. Where are you gonna go?
Okay, my fourth pick, I will go with... okay, I'm gonna go with a movie called The Tale of Renard.
Okay.
Or The Tale of the Fox. It's a French movie from 32. It's the second not the second stop motion animation movie, because there was like a bunch of like shadow puppetry stop motion movies before this, but it was this and a movie from the USSR that came out at the same time. This one's a French movie.
Yeah.
It's based on these old French, folk tales, fairy tales, kind of Aesop fable-like stories of this kind of, trickster-like fox named Renard. And it's a really fun watch. It really is. You can find it for free on YouTube. It's like an hour long. Yeah. And it's a really good time. And kind of behind the scenes, so this past week's episode of your podcast was Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yeah.
So this was actually kind of a double feature for me, because I knew that the show was, this recording was coming up and we were going to be doing this draft. Yeah. So I was just kind of like going through looking at stop motion animated movies to like see, what else was out there. And I saw that this was like, a really early on, really like kind of important movie for the craft, and I was like, oh well, it's another Fox movie I should watch, and it's short. I should watch this. So I put it on at lunch at work the other day, and it kind of ended up being a double feature of watching that and Mr. Fox back to back. Yeah, and it was a really good time. There's a lot of Mr. Fox in at least their version of Renard, I feel like.
Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. It's funny that like you have two great Fox related stop motion movies. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I like going back and like definitely like I like doing these drafts to like get stuff like that you can go back and watch for sure. But yeah, I guess like for my fourth pick, I'm gonna go with one that it kind of also is kind of a it's my mind is blank on the word I'm looking for. It's a movie with three actually different like shorter like stories within it.
Like vignettes.
Yeah. Well, not so much vignettes, but like they're like full like short complete stories. But yeah, it's a movie that came out, I want to say like either it might have been last year too, which, man, last year some great stop motion movies last year. It came out on Netflix, went just straight to Netflix, called The House.
Okay, I don't think I've heard of this.
Yeah, so I'm gonna pull it up so I get the details right on the film. But yeah, it's called The House. It has three stories, told by three different directors. Actually, yeah, there's four directors listed. I'm not sure if like a couple worked on one or something like that. But yeah, it's these three stories all centered around like not the same house, like they're all like different settings and all that, but they all like have a house in some way as like an important part of the story. Um, and like so the first one is like this like poor family that like the dad sort of like you get the sense that he like kind of sells his soul in a way, and they end up in like this really nice house. And like the house starts like I don't know, like the parents like start becoming like part of the house sort of thing. It's like, and it's super creepy. The way it's shot is like very like eerie.
I'm picturing like in this like the second and third Pirates of the Caribbean movies where Davy Jones's like crew becomes part of the ship.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely like has a different like visual look.
Okay.
Just because I guess of the nature of like the stop motion animation that it uses. It's very like there's a lot of like, especially like the people are like felty kind of like looking.
Okay.
At least for that first story. But then you have like a couple that are like animals. Like the last two stories have animals as the main characters. You have one where like there's this house with like roaches taking over, and the third story is the first two feel more like cautionary tales, and the third one feels like a little bit more hopeful. But yeah, I loved this one. It was a really fun time, and like you also get a little bit of like eerie, creepy feel in there, which is becoming a trend, I guess, in my other than Marcel the Shell, it's like a trend with my picks is like the eerie creepiness that I guess stop motion is just like really great for.
It can be, definitely.
But yeah, that's my fourth pick. This is your last pick.
Yeah.
Where are you gonna go?
So for my last pick, I'm gonna cheat just a little bit.
Okay.
So this movie is it's probably only 1/3 of it is probably in stop motion animation, but it's actually another French movie. It's a version of The Little Prince that came out in 2016.
Okay.
So it's got like a framing narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I say framing narrative. It's the story of like most of the movie.
Yeah.
Is this framing narrative of like this little girl and her neighbor who's an old man who was the pilot in the Little Prince story.
Yeah.
And then probably about a third of the movie is him telling the story of the Little Prince, and all of that is done in stop motion animation.
Right,
and it's some of the most gorgeous stop motion animation I've ever seen. Just the way like the models work and like the way they light them and the way they do space and everything. Mm-hmm. It's so good. And it was actually my introduction to that book. And the framing narrative it's good, it's charming, the animation's done well, but I fell in love with the story of the book as being told in the stop motion, and I went out and read it like the next day, and just fell in love with it. And I guess I'm almost more recommending The Little Prince as a thing, just in general. Yeah. But also watch the movie because it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't love this one because of like the extra stuff they'd put in to like frame the narrative. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It felt added on, I guess.
It does. Yeah.
And so
it feels unnecessary.
But yeah, the actual like Little Prince story part is very good in that one, and the book The Little Prince, which is it's like a French kids book.
Yeah.
Is very, very good. Actually, like picked it up at Barnes and Noble years ago and like read it in one sitting. Like in the store. And
were you just crying in front of strangers by the end?
yes, it's a very, very good book.
It is.
But yeah, so yeah, go watch the movie, but even more so read the book for sure. Yeah, so for my last pick, I am going to go, since you cheated a little bit and picked one that's not fully stop motion animated, I'll do the same. And I'm going to go with King Kong. Obviously a ton of this movie is not animated at all. It's, live action, but King Kong, the titular character, is very much stop motion animated.
And it's really impressive, like the character work they pull off with this puppet.
Yeah.
Going up against the live action actors.
Right. And it's 1933 this movie came out, and so like it really like set, I guess, like a historical precedent for like what you can do with animation in general, but also with stop motion animation for sure too. For sure. So yeah, I think it's an important film in that way for stop motion animation, and it's a good movie. I watched it not that long ago. I probably watched it a couple years ago, and it has its flaws just narratively and the way it handles certain things, I think. But man, just like what they were able to pull off with that movie and that character of King Kong, super impressive.
Yeah, and I mean a lot of those techniques that they used on Kong, like those are still like the same techniques that are being used in stop motion, right, like, to this day.
Yeah, and it makes me think of like the art forms like might not necessarily change in their techniques, but can still like do, breathe fresh air into the art form. Like, painting, like how many like new painting techniques at this point are people coming up with, but sure, there's still beautiful paintings being made. And, stop motion animation, like there's not a whole lot of like new techniques. Every once in a while you get something, but there's not a whole lot of new techniques coming out as far as like how to capture stop motion animation, but you still get beautiful works of art with it. And this movie was definitely with that giant ape, a big part of the art form for sure. So I'm glad we both decided to cheat a little bit with our last pick.
Yes.
Because I didn't. There's some other ones that I like but don't love. There's probably one more that I really love, more for nostalgia than anything else, which is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the Rankin and Bass.
Yeah. See, I didn't grow up with this, so I don't really like have the nostalgia for it. And so like while I can appreciate like, the claymation of it,
right,
I don't know, the story itself doesn't really work that great for me.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can understand like growing up on something like that, how
right.
Yeah.
There weren't, so like my list wasn't super long. I have a lot that I want to catch up with. I did see I think it was last year Selick put out Wendell and Wild, which I saw and wasn't a huge fan of, honestly. I think the animation was still great, but just the story wise, not my favorite.
Sure. That reminds me of like Leica Studios, who did Kubo and Coraline and Corpse Bride and stuff like that. Right. Their most recent movie is called Missing Link.
Yeah.
And like it's gorgeous to look at. It's probably their best looking movie. Okay. But the story's just kind of nothing. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Wendell and Wild is interesting. It's it's an interesting story, but I just don't think it's like pulled off super well. Like good idea, really interesting, but I don't know. Jordan Peele is actually part of that one. Okay. I think he was. He helped with the writing it and stuff.
Gotcha.
But yeah, and he's, I want to say Key and Peele like actually voice a couple of the two main demon characters.
That's fun.
But yeah, anyways, there were some other ones that I wanted to point out that I have not seen that probably like deserve to be on a list like this.
Sure.
One is Fantastic Planet, which is a French film.
I've seen Fantastic Planet. I don't guess it clicked in my head that that's stop motion.
Yeah, so I didn't think it was either, but it kept coming up on lists when I was looking at it, because I haven't seen it, but I've seen like clips of it. It looks like it's hand-drawn animation, but they're actually like they're moving like hand-drawn pieces.
Okay.
In stop motion. Like, so it is like 2D. It's like 2D stop motion animation.
That makes sense.
Which is really cool. Another one, Anomalisa is one that I haven't seen. It's Charlie Kaufman. His which, you know, I've seen enough Charlie Kaufman to know that I don't know if I want to see what he does with stop motion animation. It, you know,
really bring out the surrealism of the art form.
The surrealism and depression, maybe.
Yes.
So I haven't seen Anomalisa. It's not one that I'm like really itching to see either, but it is supposed to be a very good film.
I haven't seen it either, but
yeah.
It is one that I would like to catch up on.
Mary and Max is one that that I've seen and really want to see. It seems like a very like endearing and charming movie. It actually the like stills that I've seen of it, it has like a black and white. I don't know if it was shot in black and white or just like lit that way and like designed that way to look like it's in black and white. But yeah, it looks like a really charming story. The Wolf House is one that looks very chilling and creepy.
I haven't heard of this.
Yeah, it's a Chilean, I think.
Okay.
It's set in Chile, and I think they speak. I mean, they're speaking Spanish. Obviously the original title is in Spanish, but the Wolf House. I don't know the concept of it. I've looked at it before. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. But it's very well, highly rated, and like the little short. Like I've watched pieces of the trailer, and it looks very like eerie, and the way it's like lit. And I want to say like the guy that made it just like had all these like arbitrary rules that he put on himself. Like I think it's shot all in one take. Well, like, so obviously it's not one take because it's stop motion animation, so it's a bunch of pictures, but the way like the camera moves and like the whole thing is shot like as if it's in one take, I think. And like he had kind of like these I guess philosophical rules too, like we're not you know, this isn't a set, it's like a work area sort of thing. Just kind of like these mindsets he wanted to have, which is really interesting.
That is. I mean, a lot of times that's, you know, when artists like put those arbitrary rules on themselves, like you really get something special.
Yeah. So that's one I definitely want to see. And then the last one I wanted to mention is called Mad God, which came out, I think it has like a 2021 release when you like look it up, but I think it actually like released here in the US last year.
Okay.
It is, I'm looking it up so I don't get the director's name wrong. It's got by a guy named Phil Tippett, and it's kind of this apocalyptic story. I've heard really good things about it. Apparently, like, it's one of those where, like, it's just, like, a trip of a movie, and so, like, you just have to be in the right mindset to know that you're getting into something kind of wild and like fever dreamish before you watch, so that you're not like so caught off guard that you can't enjoy it, sort of thing. So that's definitely one that I want to try to catch up with sometime. I've seen some stills from it that look really cool, but yeah, stop motion animation is really cool.
It is.
I definitely want to watch more.
Same. I had pulled up a like a list of like stop motion features, and I mean, you know, it's not like live action movies or hand drawn animation movies or CG animation movies. Like, there's so much work into it that like there really is just a limited number of these things. You could watch all of the like stop motion animated like feature length movies probably pretty reasonably. Like I think there's less than 100.
There's more than that, I think.
Okay.
I think there's a good bit more than that, if I'm not mistaken. Like some of the letterbox lists that I looked through were pretty extensive. But I would have to vet how many of those are like fully stop motion animation,
Sure.
or not. But yeah, it's definitely something that I would like to dive into sometime. Yeah. Let's go ahead and end with some recommendations of the week. I'm about to be winging it. Do you have something prepared?
Let me think. I guess the thing that I would recommend the most, like just off the cuff at the moment, like if you're into video games, this probably doesn't need a recommendation at this point, but the Tears of the Kingdom, the new Zelda game, is some of the craziest game design that I've ever played, and it's really fun. I'm having a good time with it. If you like, I don't know, just like puzzle solving, like if you like living in that brain space, like it's a fun game.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that that's still an integral part of like the Zelda world. From the get-go, that was like a big piece of it. It was like kind of strategy puzzles to figure out it, when it was kind of a 2D, omnidirectional moving, but still like 2D game that it originally was. But yeah, I grew up with like in the N64 era playing like Ocarina of Time and Mask of Majora and those games, but like kind of like stopped playing video games. Like I played Wind Waker 2 on GameCube, but like after GameCube I really like didn't play video games much. So like I haven't played the newest Zelda games, but like I've seen stuff from them and it looks really cool. If I was, that would be like the number one thing I would be going after if I was still like playing video games a lot, for sure. But yeah, so I am like envious a little bit of people that do still play a lot of video games and like are playing those new Zelda games, because they do look really fun. But yeah, it's just not something that I really make time for anymore.
No, that's fair.
I do like every once in a while though, I will like hop on like a little emulator and play some old Pokemon games, just because I don't know, it's fun. It's kind of mindless at this point, just as like, especially like if I go back and play like Red or Blue, like the original two, just because like I've played them so many times that like I don't really have to think about what to do. Right. So it's kind of like something mindless to like jump on and do. But yeah, I just don't play a whole lot of video games anymore. It's really hard for me to do. Sometimes I don't think of what my recommendation is going to be beforehand and just wing it. And usually something comes up in the episode that I can recommend. So I guess this time I'll recommend the podcast that I mentioned, another film podcast that like has been a big part of my just journey into loving film more, and that's Film Spotting Podcast. It's hosted by Adam Kempenaar and Josh Larson, and they just do a great job with like making sure they cover like a wide variety of movies. They do like reviews of new films, but they also go back and like do marathons of older films, whether it's like a director or a style or like, a country or an era. They just like they cover a lot of stuff, and so it's helped me to like fix blind spots, like watching along with that that podcast. So I'd recommend that. It's one of my just favorite overall podcasts that I listen to. So yeah, I'd recommend checking out Film Spotting. Yeah, that's really all we have for this week. I hope you enjoyed our talk and our draft. I don't think we read back through our draft, so I'm going to do that before we leave. Chase drafted Kubo and the Two Strings, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, Chicken Run, The Tale of Renard, and The Little Prince. And I drafted The Nightmare Before Christmas, Coraline, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, The House, and King Kong. Both ending with our little cheap picks. But yeah, that's we'll put that up for a poll and see.
You probably have me beat right from Nightmare Before Christmas. You probably have me beat.
That Nightmare Before Christmas is my pull it, but Chicken Run too. I think a lot of people really love Chicken Run.
That's fair.
So
I haven't seen any Wallace and Gromit, so that's like the quintessential Aardman. But I feel like Chicken Run's a good like second string Aardman.
Yeah. And I feel like I've seen some shorter Wallace and Gromit, but maybe not a full length. But Shaun the Sheep too. Those movies look great, but I haven't seen any of the Shaun the Sheep movies.
Me neither.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all we have for this week. We'll see who wins that poll. I hope y'all enjoyed the Isle of Dogs discussion, and we'll see you again next week for discussion on the French Dispatch. And I've been Eli Price, and for Chase Abels, this has been the Establishing Shot. We will see you next time. Thank you so much for joining us on the Establishing Shot today. We hope you enjoyed the episode and got a lot out of it. Make sure before you go to like and subscribe on all your podcast platforms, and especially on Spotify and Apple. If you could leave a rating and review, that would greatly help the visibility of the podcast, and I would greatly appreciate it. Again, if you go to establishingshotpod.com, you can find out all you need to know about the show, where to find us on the social media platforms, where to find us podcast-wise, YouTube, and you can even leave a voicemail there on the website on the right side of your screen. So click that if you want to give a comment or ask a question about the show. Just feel free to leave a voicemail. We'd be happy to feature that on the show. And also, if you just want to email rather than leave a voicemail, you can email us at establishingshotpod@gmail.com, and we would be happy to answer your question there or feature a question or comment on the show if it pertains to the episodes. So please do that, and we would love for you to join the Establishing Shot family. You can, again, find where to do that on the donate page at establishingshotpod.com. We hope you have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.
We were happy here. For a little while.
But look, I figure it this way. Better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime.